Ignite, day 2, everyone. Let's talk about it here on a special edition of Cloud Talk Live. Everyone, so glad you are here. That's right, we're into a special edition of Cloud Talk Live. This is the second in 2 days, talking about all of the updates that happened out at Microsoft Ignite. There's a whole bevy of them yesterday. There's a bevy of them today. We're only going to touch on the ones that they talked about in the keynote. There's a whole guide they put out with all of the information. I mean, it is pages upon pages. All right, you know the routine. Although this is afternoon, people. I don't even know if I have any afternoon friends. I have morning friends. But if you are watching, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you are. What have you been following about Microsoft and this whole Ignite event that's been going on? If you haven't been paying attention to it, holy cow, they're turning the world upside down is what's happening. And it's an exciting thing to be a part of. I made my career inside of Microsoft Technologies for what feels like decades now. In fact, I started in SharePoint 2003. Can you believe it? 20 years of Microsoft experience. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there's so much has actually changed. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about some of the things that they announced out at the event, well, today. So yesterday was Scott Guthrie and today was Scott Guthrie. Yesterday was Satya Nadella. It's usually the big one, all the major things that happened. What were my key takeaways there? It was all about co-pilots and AI. And the reality is, folks, that I didn't realize how deep it was going to go in the AI scope, but it went really, really deep. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today with things. Now, first out of the gate today in the event was Scott Guthrie in his signature red shirt. I don't know. I'd love to see the man's closet. Does he actually own another color? I don't know. But out he came, and he really came out and led with, the co-pilot phrase. That is what we heard over and over again. And he led with talking about it in the context of developers. In fact, the whole stack. Take a look at this for just a second in a screenshot here. And it was that whole Copilot stack. Because if everything is driven by Copilots, and these days at Microsoft, everything is driven by Copilots. I can't say that enough. Look at this foundation. It builds off of the Microsoft Cloud, the infrastructure, foundation models, the tool chain, your data, AI orchestration, Microsoft apps, Copilots, Microsoft Copilots, your Copilots, and then, of course, everyone's now favorite, the Copilot Studio. I may or may not today have registered copilot411.com. Who knows if that's going to be a new business venture. But the reality is I believe that here's Jeff's tea leaves, that as we move forward, this year was the year of ChatGPT. Next year is the year of Copilot, because we move from this era where we are really just talking about AI in the abstract and, hey, ChatGPT, what should I cook for dinner type stuff, or create a fun picture in DALL-E, or Stable Diffusion, which you may or may not see later. But to this point of how is AI going to actually make us more efficient? All right, so with that then, Scott digs into talking about really the tool chain. And the tool chain was talking about the app platform, the data platform, and the AI platform. He didn't get into too much talking about, all of the stuff happening in the data centers. He was building on what was talked about and announced yesterday. But he got into talking about, hey, Dudley from Austin, hey, glad you're here. I don't know why that I'm not seeing your updates, but hey, Daniel, producer Daniel, wave if you're back there. Daniel is going to copy over into our little chat if folks are here. So welcome. Glad you're here, Dudley. You're new to the show. I'm glad you're here. All right, so started by talking about GitHub. Holy moly, does GitHub do a lot in the AI world? Not only writing your code for you, wicked cool, but making recommendations about code, about replacements, about starting with typing comments, and then the AI, the Copilot built into it, utilizing context of where you are to create the code that you actually need, or to fix the code that you need, to submit that code and to push it then back up into the whole world and as you're into your whole code base. And as you're doing that, it actually creating, the description of everything that happened in that update. And not just, hey, here's a few things we did, but what you did in plain English and everywhere that happens. So that's pretty cool. All right, Michael's here. I'm seeing Michael's updates. I don't know why I didn't see Dudley, but Michael's here. Glad you're here from Houston. Aren't you glad the sun's back out, Michael? I know I am. All right, so let's get back to that slide. Thank you very much. So then, I mentioned already, they dug into Copilot Studio. It was on the big slide of capabilities, because if there isn't already a Copilot for you, well, you can create it, and you do that through Copilot Studio. So they brought up the guy who leads that. Now, I know he looks like they sprung him from middle school, but I'm sure he's a well-accomplished individual. But go good on Microsoft for bringing out just the right people to do the jobs. And this guy leads what's happening in this whole aspect of the platform that includes Power Platform and such. Yes, please do visit us at the demo station. We got a bunch of smart rackers there. Head over to 312. Tell them Jeff sent you. And so when we got to talk about this stuff, it was really, in fact, he showed a really cool demo of how you actually go through and create a custom AI, a custom Copilot utilizing the Copilot Studio. Now, when you think low code, no code, when you think about the studio, when you think about creating these things, and people are going to use words like drag and drop, WYSIWYG, which sees what you get. Know that it still does take an incredible amount of knowledge of your data inside of your organization, as well as a pretty large amount of creativity to envision what this solution might look like, so that you can type in a question and get a logical answer based on your data. So these are some of the things that I learned. Now, what fuels AI? Microsoft's phrase, what fuels AI? You know what fuels AI. Daniel knows what fuels AI. It's data. Data fuels AI. And Microsoft released into preview earlier this year a product called Microsoft Fabric. It's the data analytics for the era of AI. So it's a purpose-built data lake that is designed to replicate data into it, not just copy in, but replicate and mirror data in from any of your Azure sources, but now also from external sources as well. There's a really cool example. They brought up the one of the leaders from, I forget if he was the boss or what he did, but he was really smart. From Databricks, he came up and talked about their partnership and actually created in real time, note the air quotes, we'll talk about those in a second, a custom Copilot to pull data and create and deliver information directly out of a Databricks data source, as well as other sources, of course, which is really great. Now, when we think about data inside of any of the clouds and being used, especially in an AI construct, where some compute technology is going to look at the data and it's going to train a model so that it can logically answer questions that get asked of it. Well, Microsoft realizes, all of them do, but Microsoft really doubled down several times throughout the course of this event, that Azure, of course, is built on trust. They've talked about that for a number of years, but now also talking about how Azure AI builds on trust. Your data is your data. These are their lines. Your data is your data. The data is not being used to train any other foundational models, and it is protected by what they list as the most comprehensive enterprise compliance and security models. Now, they got into security a little bit later. We're going to talk about that in a second. And holy cow, the security that's going into this. But let's talk for a second about the data. The data is really important. Now, the tools and technologies, we talked about Fabric here just a second ago. And, oh, Dr. Buzzard, I am very jealous of you being in the mountains of the Blue Ridge. It's got to be beautiful there this time of year. Sorry, distracted by the Blue Ridge. So let's go back to data. We talked about Microsoft Fabric. Fabric being their purpose-built database that allows you to mirror data into there in near real time, folks. And that doesn't mean that it has to be there as the transactional data source of record. Really can just be mirrored into there for the use of the AI process. That's been in preview. Today they announced that it is now generally available. They also announced the Copilot in Fabric now is in preview, and that the mirroring in Microsoft Fabric is now available, and that's coming from external sources like Snowflake, coming from Azure, SQL, Cosmos DB, as well as a bevy of others. So that's available now as well. Now, when they showed several demos, and I thought Microsoft did a really cool job with this today, folks. So they would have somebody walk over to the demo station. They would get behind their computer and they would start clicking screens. Now, what became very evident is nobody missed any typing and nobody missed anything, but there was, which was a big red flag. Whenever you're talking in front of individuals, if I had to type a thing while I was talking to you, especially if you're watching it, I'd make a million mistakes. There were no mistakes. But what I did see was one time somebody clicked the button once too fast and the script got ahead or behind where the video was. But it was a really cool way to seamlessly pull together, making it look like the demo is actually happening live, so you don't have any of the demo fails that we've seen many times in the past from any number of technology providers. So that's just an aside. Jeff's observations of the world. I talked about security. They brought up Vasu Jeku. She came up, as well as her boss, whose name I don't. Oh, Charlie Bell. Who's Charlie Bell? So Charlie Bell now leads all security things for Microsoft, and they spent a ton of time talking about security, and of course, Copilot being available inside of security. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the top of that stack. So Copilot talking to data sources, on top of all the foundation stuff. When we talk about security, Microsoft is dealing with security at a scale I can't even imagine. In fact, they flipped this little metric up. Every day, 65 T stands for trillion, my friends. Trillion signals are synthesized every single day by the Microsoft security infrastructure. Every single day, 65 trillion. It's categorized, it's looked at, it's interrogated, and it's used to inform everything that they do. And they got into showing how Copilot inside of Azure Security Center can really help negate potential issues. In fact, they walk through an example of somebody accidentally, not like Daniel who can spot phishing a mile away, but accidentally clicked on a phishing situation and how their tooling in generative AI has helped to solve it. Now, that gets me into one of the things I wanted to talk about today real quick as we start to get close to the end of my updates, and that is how much time through the course of all of our experience. In fact, if I were to go back to the beginning of my computing experience back when I was in high school, green screen, that's all I had. Text-based green screen. There was no GUI. This was the late 80s, mid to late 80s. We had the first PC in the house in 85. My dad was a lifer with IBM, and they made sure everybody had him, this newfangled thing. And then along comes the early mid 90s, and Windows 3.1.1 comes out, and we now have some of our first graphical interfaces. Along comes our very first versions of Mac, graphical interfaces. And the world then plows through, how do we have the best looking graphical interfaces? And where have we landed today? Back in text, right back in text. In fact, Microsoft says that I will be even saying that there is a Copilot. Sorry, I lost the word. How could I lose the word? I heard it 1,000 times today for everything these days. And Copilots literally are text-driven environments. Now, that text-driven environment, computing environment, can create images, can create charts, can create video, can create music, can create so much stuff, but it's initiating with text. And if we go back to the beginning of the conversation today that Microsoft had in Ignite, is it really came back to a few core areas. And where are my notes? There are my notes. So Copilots really are everything. And there it is. Copilots for your dev environment, helping developers do what they do even better. Directly and natively inside of GitHub, the world's largest repository for this kind of thing, and the world's leader in open source. So don't think you're locked into Microsoft-y stuff in a GitHub experience. Copilot Studio for the things that don't exist yet, that is specific to your organization. Copilot for data. We talked about that. Copilot for Azure. We didn't talk about that yet, but think about how you manage your Azure infrastructure for your organizations today. There are Copilot now exists in preview inside of the Azure Control Center for you to ask questions, text-based environments of your environment. What changed in the last day? What new infrastructure was spun up? How can I be more efficient in this environment? Show me all the non-tagged environments and let's put a tag on those items that are inside of my Azure experience, and so much more. So now Azure is there. And now Copilot is there. Copilot inside of security. Folks, we've spent all of this time focused on talking about and creating these great graphics. Well, I went in and I opened up my Edge browser. That's right, I use Edge. And I clicked on the right-hand side where there was, Jeff, talk about this fair section. I don't know what that is. So, talk about, sorry, got myself a little bit derailed right there. But right back into a text-driven environment, away from this graphical environment. And what that's my lesson learned as we come out of this today, folks, is if we go back to the beginning of it, here's the big takeaway. Here are my big takeaways from what happened today at Ignite. And it starts with Copilot for the developer, Copilot for the average user, Copilot for data, Copilot for security. These are the things, and Copilot for Azure. These are the key areas, folks. And what that, of course, makes me realize is that here it comes, wait for it, the future is just a Copilot away. Just a conversation away, folks. That's where the world has turned to. And right, that's right. I used Dolly for this inside of Bing, and it misspelled it, even though I gave it the right words. So it's not perfect yet, but the future is a conversation away. Imagine the future of your environment, whether you're working in Word, whether you're a developer, whether you're somebody who is working inside of security. It really is just a conversation between you and your Copilot to get your job done. That's the world, folks. All right, so looks like we've got something going on here. Oh, that's right, we have an event coming up a little bit later, 2 p.m. Pacific time. I'd love for you to go join us at Microsoft Ignite if you are there. There's also a live chat where we've got one of our AI experts who's going to be available to answer your questions and do a little presentation. So follow that QR code and you will be on your way. That's right. Thanks, Daniel, for bringing that up on the screen and reminding me what the heck we do around here. All right, folks, let's recap today's amazing releases from Microsoft Ignite Day 2. It's all about Copilots. Copilots for your data, Copilots for Azure, Copilots for security, Copilots for the dev, and of course, Copilot Studio to create those copilots that only you and your organization need, that can connect to thousands, quite literally over 1,000 connection points out in the world to get your data to be Copilot ready. Folks, I'm Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology. Really excited about what happened today from Microsoft at Microsoft Ignite. And I'll see you, well, not next week. We're taking next week off. But I'll see you the week after.